What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first live show of Legal Hands to the Face. If you guys are listening to this on the podcast, know that we are going to be going live every single week on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you've heard before, I'm going to tell you again, we have signed a deal with the Jacob Sports Network. So this show is going to be live streamed every Monday night during the season, following Sunday Eagles games from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Today, we're going live because a lot of things are happening. Today at 4 p.m., the Philadelphia Eagles had to get their roster down from 90 players to 53 players. You've probably heard it before. This roster is not going to be set after today. Howie Roseman, we know, is going to be making moves, making phone calls, trying to figure out how he can improve this team. In fact, right before we came on the air, another trade has been made by Howie Roseman. The guy just can't help himself. He brings in a tight end. I'm going to try not to butcher this name. Tight end Albert Okuayubam. Let me say that one more time. Albert Okuayubam. We're going to call him Albert O. Makes a trade with the Denver Broncos, bringing in Albert O. Albert is an intriguing prospect. He's a former fourth-round draft pick in 2020. He's 6'5", 258 pounds. He ran the 40 in 4.49. Eagles only have to give up a sixth-round pick. They get Alberto and a seventh-round pick back. Intriguing prospect. Outside of Dallas Goedert, they needed some depth at the tight end position. I don't know who's going to get released from that tight end position. They still have Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra. As we're on the air, I'm going to keep following it. Although the rosters had to be done at 4 p.m., word is still trickling in. So we will see. The one guy from that tight end position that I was hopeful the Philadelphia Eagles were going to keep, and he just never really amounted to his skills and his talent, was that Tyree Jackson. I had a lot of hopes for him. He just couldn't stay healthy. But with his size and athleticism, he was a former college quarterback. I was really hopeful that he was going to be able to make that transition. Doesn't happen. He got released over the weekend. But I'm going to keep tracking this, but we're going to jump in shortly to this initial 53-man roster. But you're going to keep hearing it. This roster is nowhere near set with Howie Roseman, and we know they also have 16 practice squad positions as well. But guys, some housekeeping items. If you're watching live, give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you're following along. We also post daily content to our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok accounts. So make sure you go over there and give us a follow and a like as well. If you're feeling up to it, give us a share. More Eagles fans we can reach, the better. And make sure you're subscribed to the Jacob Sports Network on YouTube. That's JAKIB. In addition to live streaming my shows, they also do a show called Sports Take with Rob Ellis and Derek Gunn. I've appeared on that show. They have Birds 365 with Jody Mack and John McNamara. I've been on that show as well. So make sure you're over there. And then my good friend Mark Farzetta does the Farzy show. Him and I co-hosted a couple post-game shows. So make sure you are following the Jacob Sports Network as well, in addition to Legal Hands to the Face. But let's jump right into this 53-man roster that we know about. Stuff's going to keep trickling in, but we will take a look. Let's first start with the offense. I don't think there were many surprises on the offensive side of the ball. At the quarterback position, it looks like they're going to keep three quarterbacks: Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, and Tanner McKee. And guys, if you're following along, leave me comments in the comment section if you hear any of the news, because this stuff is all trickling out as we are here live on the air. So if you see anything come up, anybody gets released or traded, give me a comment and we'll take it from there. But it looks like it's going to be Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, and Tanner McKee. I know a lot of Eagles fans were hopeful that the Eagles were going to make a change at that backup quarterback position, that Mariota didn't look great in the preseason. And I agree. He did not look very, very good. But what I like about Marcus Mariota is this is a guy, he's played in 87 games in the NFL. He started 74 games over his career, and he has the ability to win football games. He's 34-40 as a starter. Not great, but not horrible either. And let's face it, if Jalen Hurts goes down for any extended period of time, it doesn't matter who your backup is. This team is not going to be the same. So as long as Marcus Mariota is capable of maybe filling in for a short term, if Hurts was to go down for a week or two, I think he can steal you a game. What I do like about Marcus Mariota compared to the backup we had last year in Gardner Minshew is you're not going to have to change the offense significantly with a guy like Marcus Mariota. He has the ability to run that zone read. He has the ability to run the RPOs. So you can keep your offense the same. And we saw what happened last year with Gardner Minshew. As soon as the defense knows there's no threat of that quarterback pulling that ball on the run pass option or on the zone read, they don't have to honor the quarterback taking the ball around the outside, and then the offense doesn't work. It's going to affect your running game because the whole point of that zone read is you're reading that defensive end. If that defensive end crashes down, the quarterback pulls the ball, runs around the outside. It forces the D end to stay in his position. He can't crash down on that running back. So I think Marcus Mariota is going to be just fine. Let's hope we don't find out. Let's hope Jalen Hurts plays all 17 games, but we will see how things go. Hey, what's up, Dennis Holmes? Not a fan of Mariota. So Dennis Holmes, guys, is from the Ignorant Thinkers podcast. Great guy, big Eagles fan. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Mariota either, Dennis, but I think at this point in the season, I don't like trying to bring in a quarterback to fill that position. That's a tough offense to learn. We know Mariota can run that offense, and let's hope, like I said, we don't find out. I did like what I saw from Tanner McKee. For a 6th-round rookie, the guy looked very, very good in the preseason, but I think he will still be our 3rd-string quarterback. I'm trying to watch these roster cuts as we're going here to see if anything is popping up, especially at this quarterback position. So keep me updated, guys, if you see anything here going on. But so far, so good. Jumping over to the running back position, really no surprises here after that last preseason game. So the Eagles look like they're keeping Kenny Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Boston Scott. I thought at the beginning of the preseason here that there was a chance Trey Sermon could have beaten out Rashad Penny. I thought that was really the battle here. I didn't think they were going to keep 5 running backs. Looks like they're going to keep 4, which makes sense. But I thought that there was a chance that Trey Sermon could have beaten out Rashad Penny. The other running backs I felt were pretty set. You knew DeAndre Swift was going to make this team. The Eagles make that draft day trade for him. He brings that element that they were lacking last year, which is that pass-catching threat out of the backfield. The guy had 48 catches last year. The entire Eagles backfield had 48 catches last year. So you knew DeAndre Swift was going to make this team. Kenny Gainwell really started to come on strong in the playoffs last year. You knew they were going to really lean on him this season. And Boston Scott is just Boston Scott, Mr. Reliable, especially when he's playing the New York Giants. But those guys were all similar in size. So I thought that there was a chance that your big back was either going to be Trey Sermon or Rashad Penny. Looks like Philadelphia Eagles are going with Rashad Penny. They released Trey Sermon. There were some reports that the Eagles were listening to maybe some trade offers for him. Doesn't come to fruition, so he's getting released. It'll be interesting to see if another team claims him on waivers. If they don't, he's a guy that I would love to see them bring back on the practice squad. We know Rashad Penny's injury history. As good as Rashad Penny has been when he's healthy, averaging over 4.7 yards a carry, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and I think the Eagles need a big back in that running back room. Like I said, you look at Kenny Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, and Boston Scott, all smaller running backs. So it'll be nice if they keep Trey Sermon on that practice squad if for some reason Rashad Penny goes down with an injury again, which we've seen far too many times throughout his career. I'm hopeful Rashad Penny still has some left in the tank. These injuries take tolls on you, and I didn't see a lot of burst from him in the preseason. He looked good at times, but he also looked like he was a little bit off. So let's hope he's able to get his legs back and be that guy we saw averaging 5.7 yards a carry. Going to the outside, to the wide receiver position, I was a little bit surprised here with some of the releases that the Eagles made so far. And I think you may see these guys come back on the practice squad. But obviously, a no-brainer. They keep A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Olamide Zaccheaus. We knew all 4 of those guys were going to be on this team. But as of right now, they only have 4 wide receivers on the roster. Interestingly, they released both Britton Covey and Devin Allen. I know a lot of people were hopeful that Devin Allen was going to make this squad with his speed. We saw it in that last preseason game on that long kickoff return for 74 yards. The Eagles move on from him. I wasn't as surprised with that as I am that they released Britton Covey. I thought the Eagles were pretty solid on the fact that Britton Covey was going to be their punt returner again this year. I know a lot of people wanted to upgrade that position, but last year, Britton Covey didn't play too bad. If you look at the first 4 weeks of the season, he didn't do great when it came to punt returning. But in the last few, the guy really started to come on strong. If you look at the last 10 games of the regular season last year, Britton Covey averaged 13.3 yards a punt return. To put that into perspective, the NFL leader last season with over 25 punt returns was New England's Marcus Jones, averaging 12.5. So Britton Covey's last 10 games of the year, his average would have put him at number 1 in the league. So he started to come on strong. I don't think you've seen the last of Britton Covey, though. So guys, so you understand the way the practice squad works. Not only can they keep 16 players on the practice squad, you also have the ability to elevate a player 3 times from the practice squad to your game day roster. In fact, they did it last year with Britton Covey. They released him on August 30th last year, brought him right back to the practice squad, and they elevated him for the first 3 weeks of the season. And then they finally added him to the active roster. You may see something similar this year with Britton Covey. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make him go through waivers and then work his way back to the practice squad, elevating him every single week until they have to make a decision about adding him to the roster. And it looks like the final 53, at least as far as it is today, is out. So all these things should be accurate until Howie Roseman starts making some moves. But yeah, interestingly, the wide receiver that did not make the team, Devin Allen, Britton Covey, and then the last one that a lot of people were hopeful for, Joseph Ngata. I know people were excited about him. I was too. Early in training camp, the guy looked very, very good, but he started to really tail off towards the end. Didn't really do much in these preseason games, and I think that's what did him in. So as of now, the Philadelphia Eagles have 4 wide receivers on that roster. I would not be surprised to see Howie Roseman make some moves there as well. Then go into that tight end position. We talked a little bit about it. Dallas Goedert. The Eagles do make a trade for Albert O. Intriguing prospect. We'll see. Do they keep 4, or did they release Jack Stoll or Grant Calcaterra? I'm taking a look at the list here. It does not look like they released either of those guys. So as of now, the Philadelphia Eagles have 4 wide receivers on the roster, and they also have 4 tight ends on their roster. A little bit of an interesting move there by Howie Roseman. So they keep Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, Alberto, and who I think is going to be an all-pro this year, Dallas Goedert. If he stays healthy, will be one of the best tight ends in the league, no doubt about it. But let's take a look at those other tight ends. Obviously, Dallas Goedert's your starter. We'll see how quickly Albert, I'm going to try his name again, Aku Ibunam from Denver can get acclimated. Love his size, 6'5", 258, 4'4", 40. In 3 years, he's had 54 catches, 546 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So nothing spectacular, but if they could figure out a way to use him in the red zone, that'll be interesting to see. But they keep Jack Stoll. They keep Grant Calcaterra. Jack Stoll, pretty reliable blocker. The Eagles like that. Your tight ends are an extension of your offensive line, so they love the fact that they have Jack Stoll there. Grant Calcaterra is a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. We saw it last year in his rookie season. The issue with him was his blocking. He really needs to step up and learn how to run block. I think that's something he probably worked on in the offseason, getting a little bit stronger, making sure his technique is better. So I'll see how things work out there. Really no surprises on that offensive line, keeping Jason Kelsey, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, Tyler Steen. Did Jack Driscoll make the team? I'm taking a look here to see if he made the team. I think he would. Driscoll makes the team. Fred Johnson makes the team, and Sue Opeta as well. That's who I thought was going to make it. I don't think there's any real surprises there. These guys, you don't have the depth you had last year at the offensive line position without some of the guys they had last year, especially with starter, obviously, Isaac Sayamala. But This team, the offensive line, let's hope they don't have to go into the depth, but is Tyler Steen going to be up to speed if somebody goes down? They've been cross-training him between tackle and guard. Fred Johnson, they really liked. They released him for only a few hours, re-signed him to a 2-year deal, so they like him a lot. And Suopeta, obviously, is a guy that's been around and can play multiple positions as well. So that's your offense. Really no major surprises there. Like I said, I was hopeful that maybe Tyree Jackson would have stepped up this year. Never happened. I thought Trey Sermon was pushing Rashad Penny a little bit. That didn't happen either. But really no surprises along that offense. I know a lot of people were hopeful they were going to keep either Devin Allen, Joseph Nagata, or even Greg Ward. But I think you may see all three of those guys, or all four of those guys, I should say, make it to the practice squad. So we'll see. But let's jump over to that defensive side of the ball. This is the really interesting moves, because this was the one where the Eagles obviously have gone through the most change, was on the defensive side of the ball. In addition to losing Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator, they lost their offensive coordinator as well, but they also lost a lot of players on that defense and a lot of starters on that defense. So let's take a look. First off, the defensive ends. Defensive end is extremely deep on this team. Coming back, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith, his rookie season. A little bit concerning that Nolan Smith has missed the last 5 practices. Let's hope he's okay. It's that pec shoulder injury that he sustained last year. Let's hope he's okay. What's up, Joel? How you doing, man? Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming in. But so we'll see if Nolan Smith can get healthy. They bring back Brandon Graham. And as of now, Derek Barnett is still on this team. There were reports earlier in the week that they had given him permission to – I'm looking at some of the things here, guys. Sorry, I'm just making sure that this roster is all pretty good here. Yeah, so what we went over on offense looks pretty accurate. Interesting. The Eagles only keep 4 wide receivers and they have 4 tight ends. I haven't seen them do that before. So be on the lookout. Howie Roseman's not done. He's bringing somebody in. I don't know if they're going into the season with only 4 wide receivers, but leave me a comment if you're following along live on if there's anybody you think they should go after here at that wide receiver position. But you look at the defensive ends again: Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Derek Barnett. And interestingly, they're going to keep 6. Patrick Johnson looks like he's made this team. That's a little bit of a surprise. The first 5 names don't surprise me, but they probably are keeping Patrick Johnson because Derek Barnett may be getting traded. So that may be the reason they didn't want to risk putting Patrick Johnson through waivers or trying to slide him onto that practice squad. But let's take a look at that defensive end position. Hassan Reddick last year with an unbelievable season. We'll see if he can duplicate what he did last year. He does have that thumb injury he's trying to learn to play with. But man, Hassan Reddick, what a year he had. But the guy that I'm so excited to see this year is Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat has gotten better every single season since he came into this league. I mean, let's look at his stats. Josh Sweat. So he came into the league in 2018, hardly played. He appeared in 9 games, didn't start any of them. But in 2019, plays in all 16 games, no starts. He has 4 sacks. In 2020, he appears in 14 games. He has 6 sacks. In 21, 7.5 sacks. And then last year, 11 sacks. So we have seen Josh Sweat increase his sack total year after year after year. And from all accounts, the guy looks like he's in the best shape of his life here in training camp. I expect a big season from Josh Sweat. I think there's a chance that he may put up more sacks than Hassan Reddick does this year. Sweat is just so fast and athletic coming around that edge. Very difficult to stop. And the Eagles are just so deep along that defensive line. So they keep 6 defensive ends. We will see. Little trivia while I got you guys here. So if you're following along, and I've posted this on my Instagram, so some of you may be able to cheat here. If you follow me on Instagram, you know the answer. So everybody knows that Reggie White has the most sacks in Philadelphia Eagles history. I'm assuming all of our Eagles fans know that. He has 124 sacks. But who rounds out the top 5? Who's number 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the most sacks in Philadelphia Eagles history? Give you guys a second. Anybody know? Denny Holmes is following along. I thought maybe he would know the answer to this. But coming in at number 2 behind Reggie White, Trent Cole with 85.5 sacks. And then number 3, Clyde Simmons with 76 sacks. And then 2 active Eagles rounding out the top 5, Brandon Graham with 70 sacks and Fletcher Cox with 65 sacks. That is the top 5 for most sacks in Philadelphia Eagles history. Some pretty crazy numbers there for 2 veterans there, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. I don't think Fletcher Cox is going to be able to catch Clyde Simmons to move into number 3. He'd have to put up 11 sacks. But BG could move into the top 3. He would need 6 sacks to pass Clyde Simmons for 3rd all-time. We saw him have a career year last year. There's no reason he couldn't do it again, especially with the depth they have along this defensive line where he'll be able to stay fresh like we saw last season. Moving over to defensive tackle. So this is an interesting position as well. The Philadelphia Eagles look like they keep 7 defensive tackles. So they keep 6 defensive ends and 7 D tackles. Very, very deep. That's a lot of D tackles to keep on this team. But all these guys have the ability to play. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Marlon Tuipulotu, Moro Ujomo makes the team, and Kentavious Street. Kentavious Street may surprise some people. Defensive tackle, the Eagles signed him in free agency, played for the Saints last year, previously played for the San Francisco 49ers. This is a guy who, he's a team player. He's had some sacks from that D tackle position. He has the ability to stop the run. He can generate pressure when needed on the quarterback from the inside. I really like that they kept Kentavious Street. You haven't seen him make too many flashy plays in the preseason, but I like the depth at that position. You knew Marlon Tuipulotu was going to stay here. He's basically your backup nose tackle. And then Moro Ujomo, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Ujomo immediately get pushed to the IR. He had that concussion. The Eagles had to sign him to the 53-man roster before moving him to IR, or he would have to have remained on IR the whole season. So you may see Ujomo, look for that, for him to move to IR. That'll free up a roster spot. And in the comments, someone saying they're looking for Milton Williams to have a big year. I am really high on Milton Williams this year. He's another player similar to Josh Sweat. We've seen him get better year after year. Milton Williams is going into his 3rd season now, and the guy looks like an absolute beast. I'm excited to see what he can do alongside Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Another year for Davis and another healthy year for Jordan Davis. Last year, I think that lower leg injury affected him all season. Really, for a big guy like that, it's hard to get back to doing what you do when you're that big and you have all that weight on that injury. So I'm excited to see what Jordan Davis is going to do this season as well. But man, that defensive line is just so deep, so stacked. Another trivia question I'll hit you guys with. And if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen this one as well. But everybody's excited about what Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter are going to be able to do this season. And I started to think, what is the rookie sack record for the Philadelphia Eagles? Could Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, or both set that record? And I went and looked. And you got to go back to 2000. Corey Simon from the defensive tackle position put up 9.5 sacks as a rookie. That is an impressive rookie season for a D tackle. Can Jalen Carter do it? He's going to have an extra game to beat that record. Can Jalen Carter get 9.5 sacks and beat Corey Simon for the most sacks by a rookie in Philadelphia Eagles history? We're going to find out soon enough. And then looking at, if you go look at the total D-line, so let's just look at the defensive ends, who holds the record for the most sacks by a defensive end in their rookie season? It's Derek Burgess back in 2001 with only 6 sacks. I think that may be more attainable for Nolan Smith to get 6 sacks and set the rookie record for the Philadelphia Eagles from the defensive end position. But yeah, Corey Simon in the chat, they're saying Corey Simon was a beast. He was an absolute beast, man. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy with a stronger lower body than what Corey Simon had. He was to just throw people around. But we'll see. Jalen Carter, 9.5 sacks to beat out Corey Simon for that record. I don't know if he can. But could Nolan Smith pass Derek Burgess? That's definitely a real possibility with 6. So let's look at this linebacker position. So the Eagles decide to keep 6 defensive ends, 7 defensive tackles. As of right now, there are only 3 linebackers on this roster. Crazy to me. Crazy. And if you've been following me, you know one of the biggest concerns I had was when they let TJ Edwards walk. I was okay with them letting Kazir White walk. He had an up and down year last year, but I did not like that they let TJ Edwards walk. This was a guy who led your team in tackles last year, was number 7 in the NFL in tackles, played over 94% of the defensive snaps, and was your signal caller, had the green dot on his helmet, and they let him walk. Chicago didn't pay him a ton of money, but the Eagles then go ahead and they sign Chicago starter from last year, Nick Morrow. I knew it right away. If the Chicago Bears were willing to let Nick Morrow walk and upgrade to TJ Edwards, was Nick Morrow going to be our answer at linebacker? Well, we found out very, very quickly in this preseason that he was not. The Eagles show it. You can't always look at what they say. You have to look at what they do. And what do? They go and they sign 2 veteran linebackers a couple weeks into training camp in Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. You knew right then and there they were not confident in Nick Morrow. They prove it today. Nick Morrow gets released. So this was the linebacker they brought in almost right away in free agency. Nick Morrow is released, does not make this team. I mentioned that they signed Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. Well, you probably know Miles Jack retired. So the Eagles are going into the season as of now with only 3 linebackers on the roster: Nakobe Dean, Christian Ellis, and Zach Cunningham, who they just got a couple of weeks ago. I'm still nervous about this linebacker position. I know we're all hopeful that Nakobe Dean is going to be the stud we saw at Georgia. I'm hopeful too, but we can't guarantee that Nakobe Dean is going to be as good as he was at Georgia. We just haven't seen it. The guy's only played 34 NFL snaps in his career. I think he's going to be good. I know all of you think he's going to be good, but we don't know it until we see it. And the Eagles don't have a lot of depth with 3 linebackers on this team. That's another position. Look for Howie Roseman to make a move. I would be very, very surprised if they go into the year with only 3 linebackers on the roster. I'm sure some of these guys will get pushed to the practice squad. Maybe Nick Morrow makes it through waivers and they can slide him onto that practice squad. A guy that I would really like to see them put on the practice squad is rookie Ben Van Sumeren. You saw his athletic ability in the preseason. In that one preseason game, I think he had something crazy like 15, 16 tackles. You saw his athletic ability. He's just raw. He's not ready to play linebacker at the NFL level, but he's a guy I'd love to see them put on the practice squad and utilize him on the special teams if they can. That's an area that I've really been worried about as well. You look at the special teams unit from last season, bottom 3 in kickoff returns against, bottom 2 in net punting yards. They bring back Michael Clay, the special teams coordinator. What surprised me was that they brought him back, but when you look at the bigger picture, I think Nick Sirianni didn't want to have to replace all 3 of his coordinators. You already lost Shane Steichen to the Indianapolis Colts. You lost Jonathan Gannon to the Arizona Cardinals. I think they made the decision it was going to be too much to replace all 3 coordinators. So they bring back Michael Clay, a little bit of a surprise, but that special teams unit needs to be better. And that's what's a little bit surprising when you look at this roster. Who on this roster can play special teams? We're going to get into corner and safety in a second, but they did let some of their best special teams players go. But at that linebacker position, with the 3 guys they do keep, Nakobe Dean, Christian Ellis, and Zach Cunningham. Christian Ellis was your best special teams player last year, arguably. Zach McPherson was close. McPherson, unfortunately, out for the year. But let's see what Christian Ellis can do. But is Ellis going to play linebacker next to Nakobe Dean? It looks like right now it's probably going to be Nakobe Dean and Zach Cunningham as your starters. But we'll see if Christian Ellis can really start to work his way in there as well. But I still don't think Howie is done. Let me know what you guys think. If you think Howie is finished, yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, Howie will make a move for a linebacker. I think so too. I just can't imagine going into a season with only 3 linebackers. That's very, very light. So we will see. Cornerback. Interestingly, cornerback position, I thought they would keep 6 corners. They keep 7 corners. So you look at some of the positions that the Eagles went really heavy on. Tight end, they keep 4 of them. Defensive tackles, 7. And corner, 7. Very, very deep cornerback class. I love what they did here. These are all the guys I would have kept as well. Obviously, you bring back Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and Avonte Maddox. Those were locks to make the roster, as was Keely Ringo. Eagles traded a third-round pick to draft him in the 4th round this year. You knew Keely was coming on this team. It was the other positions that were questionable, but I like what the Eagles did. They bring back Job. We saw what he could do. He really battled in training camp and the preseason. Really like that move. And they keep Mario Goodrich and Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks was a guy, you talk about how the preseason doesn't matter. Eli Ricks earned his spot on this team in those preseason games. He battled in both of those games. You saw what Eli Ricks was capable of doing, and I'm really, really happy that the Philadelphia Eagles rewarded him with a roster spot. Not only is that good for Eli Ricks, that sends a message to your whole team. When Nick Sirianni talks about competition, he loves to talk about competition and how they compete every single day. When you had a guy like Eli Ricks go out there in the preseason and compete the way he did, he earned a roster spot. I'm really happy they brought him back. I love the way he played, his attitude, his aggressiveness, his cockiness, his swagger, all of it. I'm really happy that Eli Ricks is on this team. And he's a guy that may be able to help out on special teams. I talked earlier about Zach McPherson out for the year with that Achilles, was a great special teams player. So you have to find some other guys that can step in and play special teams on a unit that already struggled last year. Maybe it's Eli Ricks. Maybe it's Mario Goodrich. Another guy that I'm real excited about, not only on defense, but special teams. Let's go to the safety position. Sidney Brown. Obviously, Sidney Brown makes this team. Reed Blankenship makes this team. The other safety positions were a question mark. Kevon Wallace does not make the 53-man roster. Kevon Wallace has been a big disappointment in Philadelphia, unfortunately. There were a lot of high hopes. Maybe some of them weren't fair. We all saw a safety coming out of Clemson back in 2020 when the Eagles drafted him, and he just never lived up to the expectations. Obviously, safety from Clemson, if you're an Eagles fan, you know what I'm talking about. Brian Dawkins, safety from Clemson. But Kevon Wallace could never live up to those expectations. But what bothered me more about Kevon Wallace, he's had opportunities to take that safety position and run with it, and he never could. Last year, you saw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson go down. Eagles don't turn to Kevon Wallace. They give it to the undrafted rookie, Reed Blankenship. So Wallace just never could take this position and run with it. And the Eagles finally, after 3 years, decide it's time to move on. They cut Kevon Wallace and they keep 4 safeties: Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown, and Justin Evans. Justin Evans is an interesting one. Justin Evans is a guy that in the beginning of the preseason didn't look like maybe he was even going to make this team. But then he started to come on strong. You started to see him get some more first-team reps. I'm excited about Justin Evans. In fact, if you were following me on Instagram in the offseason, when they signed Justin Evans, I did a video about him that I was kind of excited about this signing. He was a great prospect coming out of college. He went to Texas A&M. He was drafted in the 2nd round in 2017. And go back, I put it on my Instagram as well, but go on YouTube and check it out. Justin Evans is the only guy I have ever seen truck Derrick Henry. When he was at Texas A&M, Google it, YouTube it, look on my Instagram, Justin Evans, Derrick Henry. He absolutely trucks Derrick Henry. This is a guy that can really bring it in the running game. He had a ton of talent coming out of Texas A&M. He had a great, promising rookie season for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then the injury bug got him. He was out in 2019 and 2020 with injuries, was out of football in 2021. The New Orleans Saints took a flyer on him last year, and he played okay. He appeared in 15 games. He started 4 of them, but he looked like maybe he was getting back to that skills that he had when he was at Texas A&M. If this guy can put it all together, he could be a real contributor for this Philadelphia Eagles team. But we'll see. They keep 4 of them. Reed Blankenship's clearly your starting safety. I still don't know who they're going to start next to him. Maybe it's Terrell Edmonds. He's this guy they signed from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was in Pittsburgh for a few years, started a bunch of games. I don't think he's going to make any flashy plays for you. He's not a great player, but he's a solid player. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. So Terrell Edmonds may be the guy next to Reed Blankenship. The reason I like that to start the season is Reed's a young guy. He's only going into his second season. It'd be nice to put a veteran next to him, whether it's Terrell Edmonds or Justin Evans. But I still am hopeful that we're going to see Sidney Brown get acclimated to the NFL level and work his way into that starting position. You saw what everyone is so excited about with Sidney Brown in the preseason. I mean, the guy flies around. And I have been saying since they drafted him, if he can figure out how to play at the NFL level, he is instantly going to become a Philadelphia fan favorite with the way he plays. We love guys that leave it all out on the field, and Sidney Brown leaves it all out on the field. Some of the things he needs to learn a little bit is, yeah, you want to get those big hits, but at the NFL level, these running backs, these wide receivers, they can take the big hit, bounce off of it, and keep going. You got to wrap your arms. These guys are the best of the best. This isn't Illinois. This is the NFL. So I think he'll start to realize that. You saw it sometimes in the preseason where he comes up wanting to get that big hit and the guy's able to break the tackle. So I think he'll start to learn and just getting accustomed to the NFL game. But he's a guy I would not be surprised starts to work his way into that starting position. But that's your 53-man roster as of now, outside of the specialists. Obviously, Jake Elliott, one of the best kickers in the NFL. You're bringing him back. You have your long snapper, Rick Lovato. But then a move that did surprise me was the Eagles release Aaron Siposs, the punter. I know a lot of us were calling for that. A lot of people wanted that. The Eagles were in the bottom 2 for net punting yards last year. It came back to haunt us in Super Bowl 57 on that punt to Kadarius Toney. Let's not even talk about it. Don't even want to talk about it, the punt. But the Eagles release him. But he's also a guy I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they put him on the practice squad and elevated him for the first 3 weeks of the season. Could actually be a smart move on Howie Roseman's part. If nobody claimed Aaron Siposs, the Eagles could move him to the practice squad and they could elevate him 3 times before they would have to actually activate him to the active roster. So I'm hopeful that maybe they go out there, they upgrade that position, but there's not a lot of options right now. In fact, I was looking today, there was a couple of guys who got released. The Patriots released Carlos Waitman, their punter from last year. The Packers released veteran Pat O'Donnell. We'll see if those guys can still have anything left. I don't know if the Eagles are even looking at them. I know they're having they're hosting some tryouts or something at NovaCare. But yeah, that punting position needs to be better. The entire special teams unit needs to be better. But yeah, be on the lookout. Siposs may be put on the practice squad if no one claims him. But that's really the 53. So like I said, some of the surprising moves were who they kept at certain positions. Only 3 linebackers, only 4 wide receivers, but they do keep 4 tight ends. But yeah, I see someone talking about King, the former Raiders punter. I don't know if he's still available. We'll have to check out. But guys, if you are watching and you weren't here earlier, I'm going to start live streaming this show every single Monday night at 6:30 following Eagles games. It's going to be live streamed here on the Legal Hands to the Face social pages. It's also going to be live streamed on the Jacob Sports Network, JAKIB. So make sure you head over there as well. But if you're following right now, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. When we get done the show, head over to Instagram. Make sure you're following there as well. We post daily content, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're even posting YouTube shorts here as well. So it's going to be a really fun season. We got a lot of fun things planned. It's going to be a great year. I am so excited. We are almost there. I mean, we are almost there to the regular season. So we kind of went through the roster. Let's keep our eye on some things that are going to change. But before I let you guys run tonight, I just wanted to take a look at week 1. And something that's been bothering me is that the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles, as the Super Bowl representatives from the NFC, have to start the regular season on the road. And that was pissing me off. Why are they why did the New England Patriots get a home game? Why do the New England Patriots get to open up at home and the Philadelphia Eagles don't? So I went back and I wanted to see, is this a unique thing that the Philadelphia Eagles have to start on the road? How many times has it happened? So I looked at the last 10 years, and it's happened only 4 times in the last 10 years. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but 4 out of the 10 Super Bowl losers had to start out on the road. The more concerning thing is that Super Bowl hangover that I'm hopeful is not going to affect the Eagles this year. It's kind of a real thing. You look at the week 1 records overall of the Super Bowl losers. They're 6-4. They're 2-2 on the road. But you look at their weeks 1 through 3 records, and they're only 16-14. So pretty much 500 football for a team that, every year you go to the Super Bowl and lose, you're hoping that you have a good team coming back the next year. And these teams are only 16-14 in the first 3 weeks of the season over the last 10 years. And you look at this Philadelphia Eagles schedule, they can't afford a Super Bowl hangover. The schedule gets very, very difficult starting in week 9. These first 8 games are very, very important that the Eagles win as many as possible to have a chance at that number 1 seed in the NFC. Because remember, 2 teams don't get a bye anymore. 2 teams don't get a bye. Only 1 team gets a bye. And I think that bye last year was very important for the Eagles. Look what happened. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. The Eagles needed that bye to try to get him healthy. And I don't see a team in the NFC being able to come into the Link in the winter, in January, and beat this Philadelphia Eagles team. So that home field advantage is just as important as well. But let me end on a positive. So I'm hitting you with the Super Bowl hangover. Let me hit you with a positive. A lot of people are concerned that the Eagles are opening up against the New England Patriots. And Bill Belichick is going to have all this extra time to prepare for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So I went back and looked at the last 10 years that Bill Belichick, what his record was on opening day. And it's not that great. You would have thought that the great Hall of Fame coach, Bill Belichick, with the extra time to prepare, was going to have this unbelievable opening day record. Well, in the last 10 years, Bill Belichick is only 6-4 on opening day. And in the last 2 years, he's 0-2. So this is not something that I am as concerned about, because I thought, just like you guys, hey, this is the New England Patriots. This is Bill Belichick. All this extra time they have to prepare for. Well, it's not that bad. He's only 6-4. And there's a question in the chat about how many of those Super Bowl losers lost both of their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators in the same summer. And I had a stat on this before. Let me see if I could find it. It does not happen often. It does not happen often. So, in fact, I'm looking at it here. Losing both offensive and defensive coordinators has only happened twice since 1994. So you have to go all the way back to the 94 San Francisco 49ers, who lost both coordinators, and then the 2004 New England Patriots, who lost both coordinators. So it's not something that happens often. That is a concern. Obviously, not only on the defensive side of the ball with Sean Desai, a bunch of new players, a new defensive scheme, are there going to be any growing pains with Brian Johnson as your play caller? I'm hopeful there's not. Was the quarterback coach last year. He's got a great relationship with Jalen Hurts. He knows this offense. They talked about how they game plan going into the week about certain plays and situations, but there is definitely a feel for the game that we just won't know until we see Brian Johnson call plays at the NFL level. He called plays in college at Florida, but he's never called plays at the NFL level. And we saw last year, Shane Steichen, great play caller. In 2017, Doug Peterson, great play caller. And it's not all about, there's preparation during the week, but there's also knowing the feel of the game and being able to call the right play at the right time. And that is certainly a question mark. Good point, King AB 215. That is certainly a question mark going into this season. So we will see. But I am hopeful. No Super Bowl hangover. The Eagles really can't afford that. They have to come out strong in these first few games. They got to get the wins early because the schedule gets really tough starting in week 9. But guys, a reminder again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be coming live every single Monday night. I got some really exciting things planned. We're going to have some great guests. It's going to be a great season, and we made it. It felt like we were never going to get through that damn offseason. The offseason is finally over, and we can start looking. Really, the next few days, this roster will start to change a little bit. This 53-man roster is not final really until next Tuesday, the week of the Patriots game. But we can start looking at what our roster is going to look like, who the starters are, and then more importantly, game planning and preparing for our week 1 opponent, the New England Patriots. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're listening on the podcast, check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. It allows you to engage, comment, and you can see my ugly mug. So give us a like, give us a follow, give us a share. And as always, go Birds.